I do not do this. I am not that lazy guy.
I do.
So, foot in position, pull the bike forward, pops off really easy, and the stand bounces around the rear wheel. Please subscribe to help you and your motorcycle perform better. On the table we have a set of GP stands that came from Amazon. Mr. Williams decided to buy a set. They were $300 and we got a lot of stuff that came with it. So first, and for me the most important part, is that we have a converter stand. So we can have a front stand where you can use the bottom of the fork legs here or onto the radial part of the brakes, those pivots, and then the shaft goes in here and gets pinned in. So the nice part there is we've got that as an option. Then we've got the converter stand, so you put the pins in, that locks into place, and then you can pick the bike up by the neck. So that's wonderful. At that point we have two forms of use with that, and as we said, we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pins that come with the set at that price. Now on the rear stand we have two options. We have our spool option and we have our non-spool option. Now you can see those are the same on either side. It doesn't matter in these pivot, so that if the stand is on and your swing arm is angled, it'll still take care of it. And it's a nice width, so it will get under pretty much all of the swing arm, but we're going to test it in a minute and make sure that it does. So a couple options here, spools or no spool, and then of course we've got our locking mechanism here, which is just the threaded bolt with the plastic holder to go in. On all of these there's no holes to lock into. It is just what we would call a friction fit. So it goes in, you tighten it down, and based on that level of tightness, that's the friction fit where it won't go anywhere. So these are not pre-drilled. Your other option, of course, is when you use the stands for your bike, if you figure out where everything goes and mark it, then you can measure that distance to center, drill, and then fit these specifically to your bike. But drilling a hole isn't necessarily a good idea, so having solid pieces of metal for the front and the rear means that they're multi-adjustable and you can make it fit. Obviously the rear is much wider than the front, so it's a no-brainer to figure out which is which. So there's all the pit parts and pieces. For me the big ones, they're 9 pins, because pins are not cheap. So to get all of this for that price seems exceptionally reasonable. So now let's go ahead and see how it all works. I think it's fair to say that the industry standard is for sure Pitbull. So we're going to do a little contrast and compare here.
Pitbull didn't give us any stands. Pitbull hasn't paid us any money to do this. So why bring up Pitbull when we're doing a review on these GPI stands? Context is everything. Context gives meaning to everything. Shaquille O'Neal is only a huge human being because the rest of us aren't. It's us as a context that give meaning to the fact that he's huge. So the Pitbull stand provides some context that gives us some meaning as to how good or bad or insignificant or fantastic the GPI stands are.
So the first thing to start with is our converter piece. So you can notice a much longer neck on the arm that comes to the frame in regards to what we're going to use. You can also notice that the converter stand is really narrow. So there's a big difference there in width. And then the next piece of the puzzle is height. And to that extent, you can see that the Pitbull arm goes straight, but the GP Industry stand goes down. Now what we're using, because this we've had for quite some time, is the original offering that came out. There's a newer design, but this isn't it. So we're going off the equipment we have, not the latest and greatest design from Pitbull. These can line up just the same in width when we look this way at them. So there's no problem there in the fact that these are adjustable in and out is a feature that the Pitbull does not have. That in and as of itself might be helpful on a broader range of motorcycles because we can set these out and bring these in. So this makes this particular stand much more adjustable. When we put them down, you can see the Pitbull is substantially higher, substantially. And there's obviously a completely different design, and this is just round bent tube, where this is an upright with a welded tube coming in. So different designs, different principles, but the bottom line is with the Pitbull, the front wheel is actually going to be considerably higher just using the front stand, let alone the converter stand. As far as this goes, the wheels look identical, which is interesting. They look like they're almost exactly the same. They're not, but it's close. One more nice feature, and I took advantage of it in my race trailer. You can hang the Pitbull on the wall with those tabs if you make a bracket in your trailer or in your garage. So these can hang up on the wall and just sit right there like that. So storage of these things, you can put them up and out of the way because of those cast pins. So that's a big benefit that we don't have, because on the GP industry stand, there's no way to get that done unless you physically make that yourself and weld it to it. So that's one other feature that for me was huge in storing stands. Now there is one other type of stand, and what you'll see there is this type of physical structural arrangement, but it's conical on the top with a blunt end. Those go into the holes where the bolts go through to secure the cartridge into the base of the fork. So there's a different type of stand that doesn't have these fittings at all. Smaller, lighter, but every time you insert that into the base of the fork, obviously you're creating wear. Not the best idea over time, because the rubber really helps cushion what you're using on the base of the fork or the radial arm off the brake. So far less wear and tear with this design. Now on the rear stands, we had talked about we were able to convert between spools and no spools pretty quickly and easily by just unscrewing our knob here and switching them out, which doesn't take very much time at all. Done. So very quick, simple, functional, easy. Wheels inside, and lift point is just basically the palm of your hand fitting around the end of the bar, and just it's a straight lift. So you're taking the weight immediately onto that. Now for the Pitbull, way more time, way more energy, way more effort to take our converter piece off, flick it over and turn it around, and then rebolt it, then reposition it. So a lot more intensive labor, but we have a nice big fat shoulder on this side when the swing arm hits against here to secure against our rubber. The other piece that's interesting is when we put them side by side, they're about the same length. The Pitbull's just a tad longer, but obviously from a security basis, this is very small tab compared to that tab, which is huge when we do it that way. So there's a big difference in security of the swing arm against and fitting on the rubber. So more labor intensive to get all this turned around, switched around. Wheels are on the outside, not the inside, because we've got our two pieces to hang this on the wall. Height, well, they're pretty much the same. The Pitbull's actually a little lower on the spool, but when we flip these over, our rubber piece on the inside is going to be a lot higher. So technically, spool side is lower, rubber piece is higher. What does that mean? Well, let's show you real quick. So as you can see now on and we'll just put a couple of threads in here. Where are we? Right there. So now you can see straight across from this angle that it is considerably higher. So this will get the rear wheel, if you're using non-spools, higher in the air. Slightly lower in the air. Slightly, there's not much in it, but slightly lower. Now obviously your leverage point is different because your bar's coming in up on the upright and your handle where you're gripping is further back. From the center of the wheel to the end of the handle is right around 30.5 inches. Center of the wheel is 24.5 inches. That's a big difference. So based on that, the further away you are, the less effort you use because you've got more leverage. So energy required might be higher because this is a shorter distance. Those who are OCD will not have a problem with this. But you have loose parts. Where are you going to put them? Are you going to painter's tape them on here or on here? How are you going to keep these, all of these, together with the stand? Now, yeah, it's easy if you've got spools and you only ever use spools, but maybe you need these because unfortunately the bike fell over and the spool broke off. So how are you going to keep these parts and pieces together? Are you going to custom fabricate a piece here that these sit in on top of there? There's lots of things you can do, but with the pit bull, it's all in one place. You just take it out and flip it around. So a COVID weight of 215 pounds. 180 was the lowest I ever got for racing. That's a lot. Now, I'll weigh myself with the stand, 226.4 and 228. So 1.6 pounds heavier on the pit bull. 229 on the pit bull front stand, 229 on the GP Industries front stand, so they're identical in weight. Just the pit bull rear stand is ever so slightly heavier. So we'll start with the GP Industries first. I love the straps on rear seats because it makes this job very easy. First task I have is to size it and see where we're at. I need to go wider generally. So that's easy, it's quick. No spanners or wrenches required. Okay, so now it's just because this is shorter, how much more torque is it going to take to get it up? That's a fair amount of effort. The nice part is, even if you go to the ground, your hand is free and clear. So you're not going to injure your knuckles. There's plenty of clearance here with the stand. So as far as that goes, it's a lot of energy to initiate and get the wheels to move, but once it moves, then it locks in, and you heard the stand go smack down on the ground, so it plants it nice and wide. Okay, let's put it down. Needs to be wider as well. We got one loose, so that's all the way to the end now. Okay, that's in. Now at this point, leverage, much easier, way less effort to get it here. And lots of clearance for your hand. But the nice part on the pit bull is it doesn't accelerate into the down position. So you have lots of leverage here with very little energy spent to get that into place. All right. Now the front stand, again, we've got to size it, but now the bike's up, that makes it easy. So we need a little more this way. Now with the front stand, you don't have to take it away, which is nice. Again, this is quick with our black plastic dials. Okay, there we go. So now, I generally will hold the fairing here, and then how much energy for that initial lift? There's quite a bit to get that wheel to go, and then it's going to go. Nice and even to that point. Again, your hands free and clear, so the bend in the bar there will keep your hands safe. In this area, you can feel it want to drop quickly down. But the hard part is this piece here, just getting that up in the air. All right, let's compare. Oi! That's a lot more energy and effort to get that to move. But again, that sets down gently. Plenty of room for your knuckles. And once we get past that fulcrum, from here on out, super light and easy to move the bike. So both stands are very similar in this zone. All right. So that gets that done. Almost every sport bike, standard bike, touring bike, they all have the same wheel size, and the gap or the width between the outside of the fork to the outside of the fork is pretty much set, even for dirt bikes. So at that point, not having adjustability for width here was never a big deal because it worked for such a huge range of motorcycles. Now, obviously, if you've got a 200 section front tire, then obviously your axle's way longer, so you need something that will go wider, and Pitbull offers a stand for that application. So, given that this was static and couldn't change, it worked for so many bikes, they didn't need to make it that way. All right, we're not going to get a tape measure in there and do it accurately, so the easiest thing to do is use a bit of wood, go to the bottom of the wheel, and mark it. So that's going to be right about there. .95 millimeters for the front. Okay. This is obviously considerably lower. So pluses and minuses. One, when you're putting the front wheel in or taking it out, the wheel's much closer to the ground. So it comes in and out much faster, way easier. The other part is, because most of us do this, your foot is not angled up. You're taking basically the weight of the wheel on the top of your foot. So pulling the wheel in and out with a tire that is closer to the ground actually makes it easier for you to do. That being said, you're all crunched up and you're in here, so there's an optimal height for you as an individual. That depends on how long your fib is and how tall you are. If I'm 6'6" and I'm down here, this is really awkward. If I'm 5'2", this is way easier. So the stand has its merits of being higher or lower based on your physical body size and what you're used to working with. So, axle is loose. Let's go ahead and set the wheel down. There it is. Now, we're hitting the fender. Can we be cheeky and try and work it out? No, that's stuck. Ow! And so is my finger. So again, even if you want to struggle and work hard to try and get this thing out, which I'm going to struggle to get it back in now, front fender, front mudguard has to be lifted out of the way. So now we need to try and get our wheel back in, but if you look at the angle here, from the flex that we've got from each side with the extension, both sides are actually caving in. So we're getting this angle. So in it, let's get this axle in first before we carry on. Let me just seat this. Seat it. Now we're stuck because the axle is bent in the... Nope, still doesn't want to go. There it goes. All right, let's take the axle out. Take the wheel out and remove it. Straight in, straight out, no problem at all. Now, the best part about the strength factor here in this configuration, because it's all linear, is that from the side we're not getting pivot off of these arms coming up at all, so we're not getting any buckling. Axle's coming through, goes straight through, line the wheel up, there we go, that's in. Now a little lateral force because we've got to push the axle this way into the keeper. There we go. And it starts threading straight away. So, more clearance, easier access, better structural rigidity, and far less work for you as a person, taking the axle in and out, taking the wheel in and out. Now for our rear wheel, that's about perfect for gap and distance. So let's go ahead and pull all that out. And that is 78 millimeters. Yeah, 78. Yeah, that's going to be identical. That is 77 millimeters. So not much difference. So rear wheel is going to be the same height no matter what. I do not do this. I am not that lazy guy.
I do.
But a lot of people off the rear stand want to grab the bike, put their foot here, and flick it off of the stand by moving it forward. So we may as well simulate what happens here in doing that. So, foot in position, pull the bike forward, pops off really easy, and the stand bounces around the rear wheel. Is that a bad thing? Well, let's move it out of the way. The bad thing is, those hit the ground. So if you bend this, you've got to buy a new one. And repeatedly smashing it against the ground means that these don't hit because it bounces off that. But how long are these going to last before you actually break the plastic? Or worse, you bend the screw and lock it in. And now you've got a fight on your hands to take that out. So let's compare. All right, what happens? Well, what are you hitting every time? You're hitting the flat here. And everything else is clear. So every time you flick it over, you're hitting this pretty hard on the ground. So the question is, over time, based on the thickness and structural integrity of this, are you going to bend these this way because the impact is coming that way to close that gap up? Or are they going to torque and twist and tweak? So very hard metal versus plastic. This is probably going to be a lot more durable in that situation. It's worth taking a look at if you are one of those people that uses his boot and just pushes it forward. This in the long term will prove to be a lot more durable. Now in terms of the converter stand, our pin is secured with a screw and a nut. So you can snug this up as much as you want. It is a nylock nut, so it's got that friction. Then the other part is we have our two clips on the one side stored, and then on the base we have the holes for the clips to go through. that would secure it in place to here. So to do it properly, obviously, you have a choice. One is install this into the head stock, bring it up and then put the clips in, or assemble the entire thing in one piece now and then bring it up. Personally, I keep them separate. I want this to be located first, then I bring the front stand in and pick the bike up. So we're going to use like for like, so all Pitbull and then all GP Industries. Now the reason I want it loose is because I can do this and put it in where I want to go, and I can be very careful with the brake line. The other reason is, once I go ahead and locate, why are you fighting me? I don't think so. There it is. All right. So now I can get this position. From here, I can bring my front stand in, get it to locate on both the dowels. That's on. That needs to come in there. Okay, so both are on correctly. Now I can grab this section of the converter stand. We know this is hard initially. It takes a lot more energy to get it into the air. And at this point, get the stress, hold, and lift. Where are we at now with the converter stand? Because the whole reason for the converter stand is to allow us to take the wheel off, to bring the forks out, and do some other work. What have we got now? Because this is way easier to see. 120 millimeters off the ground. So the beauty, we can do wheels, we can do forks, we can do all stuff. We've got lots of room to get everything out. There's never an issue at this height with getting the wheel out but leaving the fender in place. So at this point, if the bike's going to stay there, then I can pull these pins out, put the pins into location. So one out, one in, and do that on both sides that quickly to make sure this doesn't come loose out of there. So it doesn't take but a second to do it, and put it back. Now with the GP Industry stand, I have to do a lot more stuff. So take those out. Take that out. That's going to go through. They want that way. So you go inside to out. Okay. So let's get this done. All right. One. And come on. It's brand new, so you'd expect it to be tight. There we go. It'll be easier that way with this, and spring it over. Right. We'll see how that goes with any instability, but it's got that side movement. So we have to have this as one solid piece to put it together. So now we got to fiddle to get ourselves in. Okay, that's fully located and bottomed out. Now, there's almost no, I can get to my first knuckle. That's it. So that's not a whole lot of distance. First knuckle would be roughly 20 millimeters. So now the question would be, at that height, could we get the tire and wheel out with the fender in place? Our dials are right up against the brake caliper. So working on the brake caliper, not that it's going to be challenging, but we need to be able to work in that space, so we've got to work around this where the pit bull doesn't have this in place at all. Remember we were talking about the free play? Once you've got the stand in position, then you can go ahead and dial that in to where you are on both sides, lock it, so then there's no wiggle. So once this is in place, don't forget that you have to use the plastic dial and screw it in and get it tight against our bar. But the interesting difference that's immediately obvious is very little clearance for the wheel compared to the pit bull. Overall, does it do the same job? Sure. Question is, can we get the front wheel out? All right, axle. So that's on the ground. It's free of the keeper, but without taking the front fender off or taking all the bolts out so it lifts up, there's no way to get the wheel out. Courtesy of Mr. Williams's wood shop, we're now using natural resources. And those natural resources are under the stand and the wheels, so it's perfectly safe, easy to do, and all we're trying to do is get more gap to get the wheel out. So let's extract the axle. There's no question there's a bigger gap. So now we have to overcome the front of the stand here and the front of the fender or mudguard. Oops. So we still need to go ahead and take all the bolts out of the front fender or mudguard, lift it up and take it out.
Action.
All right, honest mistake. First time through, completely missed that we have a series of holes to actually make the pin piece that goes into the triple tree substantially taller to give us more clearance to get the wheel out. So, honest mistake on that one. We've gone to the highest setting. We've got everything set back up, ready to go. So now we'll do the retest. So that gives us substantially more clearance between the wheel and the ground. Let's go ahead and remove the axle. There it is. Take that off the keeper, set it down. Now, previously, there was trouble getting it over the lip and hitting the fender. So obviously we've got the same issue we had before, but if we turn it sideways slightly, can we get it around the corner and out? Well, not like that. Can we lift the fender slightly? No. But can we kick it just clear of the disc here in the bottom of the axle? And can we bring it sideways slightly and get it out? There we go. Yeah. Got to be careful so you don't scratch the side of your rim, but that's doable. So let's reverse it. Yeah, there it goes. So you've got to be very careful, but it will come in and out using that technique to improvise rather than just wheel it straight out the front. So it's doable and possible on the longest length, and we can just get it out. So purely on a level of ease of use, convenience and storage, as the industry standard has and continues to be pit bull, I would take these everywhere with me, which is why this is what I use everywhere I go, every class I teach, every track I go to, because I just need this. I don't need parts and pieces and bits and pieces of wood to make it work. But for the convenience of your own home, to work on your own bike, once you figure out what you need with the front end, then these will work really, really well for you, because you'll figure out what it takes to make it work for you. And the price point being $100 cheaper for the GP Industries with all the pins offered, that's a hell of a deal for what you're getting. So figure out the price point, take a look at how and where you will use the stands, and make your own call on what you buy.
Since I have an entire garage full of bikes, I already have some pit bull stands. When I need a stand in a pinch, the GPIs will work just fine. I can use the shims, as you can see, to make the front stand work. Everything's going to be copacetic right here in the shop. I would never take them anywhere. They're just not durable enough. As Moss said, he never does what I'm about to do. He's the guy that's very careful and meticulous. I'm just a kind of a trash kind of a guy. And I do this every time at the track, every single time I get on the bike. Wearing gloves, the suit doesn't provide a lot of mobility. Gloves want to slip on the tail section. There's never a seat on a track bike. It's just slippery tail section. So I do this every single time. Those little plastic knobs striking the ground on the GPI stands would be done probably the third time I got on the bike. They would be cracked and skittering across the floor. I wouldn't take those stands anywhere. They're just for shop use. And because I have multiple bikes, that's just fine. I need a stand here, I need a stand there. So in terms of just having them in the shop, and because I have multiple sets of other stands, I don't rely solely on these GPI stands. If I was to rely solely on these GPI stands, I had one bike, even if I was just a street guy who might do a track day, maybe not do track days, but I want to do extended work on my bike, remove the forks, send them off for service, or remove the forks, do my own fork oil change, etc. Even with a pair of regular car jack stands, you can put them under the foot pegs, then you can take out the shock and service the swing arm, etc., etc. I would get the pit bull stands. Because I already have a complement of pit bull stands, these ones will work in a pinch, so I'm going to keep them. Dave Moss can tune your suspension no matter where you are on the planet via his remote tuning service. Contact Dave on Facebook or by email, dave@davemosstuning.com.